I just heard something that is kind of disturbing because it makes perfect sense, but also ew. I don't know how I feel about it. So, way back in time when people gathered in small, very small, 50 to 70 people communities, they were hunter gatherers and they lived in very close knit, and monogamy did not exist. Sex was incredibly indiscriminate. Ovulation, fertility was hidden so that not even the mother who would take multiple sexual partners, and this was done for the most basic of reasons, and that a man, if a woman let a man have sex with her, he was less likely to attack her, he was less likely to harm her. And since nobody knew who the father was, everybody in the village was the father, and every child was potentially every man's child. And all the men in the village were committed to protecting all the children of the village because nobody knew whose child was whose. So apparently, these people all looked alike too, right? These had to have been like really close. There had to have been a lot of incest. I don't know. The narrator really kind of skipped over that if and didn't mention incest, but I would imagine if sex was just indiscriminate and they were just mating like animals, like I mean these are humans, right? Like they are smarter, they have tools, but their behavior, their mating behavior, is very indiscriminate. And this is oh, I don't know how to feel about this because I know it makes sense. And then agriculture became a thing, and settlements, permanent settlements, then cities, and then people started to own stuff, right? Men started to own things, and it became important to know who their children were because they had something to pass on. They now owned businesses, they had wealth, they had cattle, they had property, right? And they needed to protect that, and they would only pass that down to their children. So it became imperative that they control women's sexuality and that a woman only take one man and have children for one man, but men were allowed to have multiple women because that's the way it was done when it was indiscriminate. Nobody, monogamy didn't exist. Well, men didn't want to give up the multiple women, but they wanted to control the reproductive uh, processes. And so they wanted to know that any child that came out of any woman, they wanted to know who that child belonged to, who the father was. So women were prohibited in having more than one sexual partner, but while men were allowed to continue having multiple sexual partners for the purposes of making more children. That was how that's how they solved this the problem, I guess. Like that's how it went down. That's exactly how it went down. 100% that's how it went down. 100% that's exactly how monogamy came into being. And prior to that, it was just a big free for all, like chimpanzees, right? So I don't really know what to think. I don't know how to feel about that. I'm having a very strong reaction to it, and I'm still unpacking it. But I wanted to make this while it was still while the awe of the moment, the thought, the conundrum this creates, because it makes perfect sense that in okay, so back in Genesis, when the people began to multiply on the earth and there was a lot of indiscriminate, I think that's the time And so humans really began to, they were indiscriminately breeding, you know. Women were just getting pregnant and that was all there, you know what I mean? Like nobody knew who the dad was. And so there was a lot of breeding going on. A lot of babies, right? A lot of babies being born all the time because of all the indiscriminate sex, right? So there's that one moment right before the flood where God's like, yeah, there's just too many of these motherfuckers. And the Sumerians tell a story of Enlil getting mad because the humans are making too much noise. And he wants to cull the population. And so after culling the population and you have to start over, now you got to come up with a new way to control the population so that you don't have to destroy it again. And so, monogamy, right? One man, one woman. But again, men are always greedy, and they remembered a time when they could have multiple women whenever they wanted, so they invented the harem. They gave themselves a hall pass to go out and have multiple wives. And in the case of like Solomon of Israel, he had 1,000 women. He had 300 wives and what is it, 700 concubines or some shit. Like he had 1,000 women, and 700 of them were sex slaves. Ew. He didn't even bother marrying them. They were just there in case he got horny and wanted to take his pick. It's literally the most disgusting and greedy thing if you really unpack it. Take it out of the Bible and just think about that. Think about anybody having that many women just because they can. That's fucking gross. That's fucking disgusting. But yeah, so yeah, the Anunnaki, Enlil, right? Because that story originates with the Sumerians, the Anunnaki. The story says that Enlil caused the flood because he wanted to get rid of the humans. They were too noisy. And he tried starving them out and he sent plagues. That didn't work. So he flooded everything, and when Noah was left, right, according whatever, they set up this whole new rule system, right, the Noahide laws, and voila, the patriarchy, men controlling women's sexual, reproductive freedoms, right, curtailing, having women breed on command, right, all because of because kingship came from heaven. According to the Sumerians, the concept of kingship, of government, was given by the Anunnaki. All the laws, the way society operates, began with the Sumerians, and it was given to them by these alien god beings who they give credit for creating everything, including them. And by extension us, because we can trace our heritage back to the Sumerians. And they claim they were made by aliens. And the story is fascinating, and I highly recommend everybody get involved and learn that story. That's really important. But yeah, people used to just fuck like animals and live in herds. True story.